the smoke had barely lifted when the deputy called it in. A forest fire that had burned unchecked for nearly 3 days in the mountains outside Bend, Oregon, finally died overnight after a sudden rainstorm. But at sunrise, when the fog rolled low over the charred valley and firefighters began sweeping the ashes for hotspots, one of them noticed something beneath the collapsed remains of a scorched pine. Not just metal, a shape, a silhouette, a roof. And then, as they cleared more of the debris, a door handle, a window, a bumper, a car. The deputy radioed it in with a strange edge in his voice, as if he already sensed this discovery wasn't just a burned-out vehicle, but something that carried years of weight behind it. When Detective Rowan Hale arrived at the scene, the last threads of steam were still rising from the blackened earth. He stepped out of his SUV, the air sharp with the smell of wet soot and something older, something that seemed to cling to the forest itself. He walked toward the clearing, boots sinking slightly into the damp ash, and he paused for a moment before he saw it fully. The metal of the car melted in places, the frame twisted, but unmistakable. And on the back, hardly legible through the smoke stains, the faint outline of a license plate number that he knew instantly. He didn't have to read it twice. He didn't even need the database. He whispered the name under his breath, like an old memory resurfacing. Emily Varner. On screen, the text would appear with a soft fade. Bend, Oregon, present day. Rowan drew closer, exhaling slowly, the kind of breath someone gives when the past steps out of the dark. Emily Varner had vanished in September of 2003. Last seen leaving her apartment near downtown Bend, 20 years old, a college sophomore studying forestry management. Her disappearance had fractured her family and left a hollow scar on the town. For years, rumors had ebbed and flowed like tides, sightings in other cities, theories about running away, whispers about someone she trusted. But there was never a body, never a trace. Nothing that told the story of what had happened after she walked out her front door that evening. Until now. Rowan crouched beside what used to be the driver's side window. The fire had consumed almost everything. The upholstery, the dashboard, even the steering wheel was warped like melted wax. But inside, between the twisted metal and piles of collapsed debris, there was something else, something pale, a shape. His breath slowed. Bones. Human remains, curled inward, slumped toward the driver's side footwell. He swallowed, his jaw tightening. After 21 years, Emily Varner had finally been found, but not by intention, not by breakthrough, not by investigation. By a forest fire that burned hot enough to reveal what the world had forgotten. As firefighters stepped back respectfully, Rowan leaned closer. Something caught his eye. Just beneath the skeleton's right hand, half buried in ash, half protected by the metal frame, a thin rectangle, melted at the edges, the plastic blackened. A phone, a 2003 flip phone, shockingly intact. He didn't touch it yet. Instead, he simply stared at it, the eerie stillness of the moment pressing down on him. Devices didn't usually survive fires like this, at least not in recognizable form. But this one had, as if it had been waiting, watching, preserving something for the moment. It finally came back into the light. Rowan straightened up and exhaled, a slow fog leaving his mouth even though the air wasn't that cold. Someone always knew. Someone always hid something, and someone always left a trace. Fade cut. The screen transitions to 21 years. Earlier, September 2003. The evening air was warm, tinged with the early signs of autumn. Emily Varner left her apartment wearing jeans, a gray sweater, and her silver pendant necklace, one her mother had given her for her 18th birthday, the one she seldom took off. Neighbors later told police she seemed cheerful, maybe excited about something. She carried her textbooks under one arm and her flip phone in her other hand. She walked toward her car, a used teal sedan her father had helped her buy, parked at the far end of the lot. She waved at someone across the street. The witness couldn't identify who. Just a silhouette near the edge of the trees. A figure who didn't wave back. Emily opened the driver's door, tossed her books onto the passenger seat, and climbed in. That was the last confirmed sighting of her alive. On screen, September 17th, 2003, 8:14 p.m. But now, in the present, Rowan found himself staring at the warped and melted version of that same sedan, its once teal paint burned down to a metallic skeleton. He circled the vehicle, scanning the ground for any indication that it had been buried intentionally. The fire had wiped away nearly everything. Footprints, tire tracks, soil layers. But there was one unmistakable detail. The car hadn't crashed. It hadn't rolled. It hadn't been abandoned in panic. It had been placed here, deliberately hidden. Someone had driven it deep into the forest, wedged it off a narrow service road, and covered it under layers of brush and debris. Left it where it could stay concealed for decades, unless something catastrophic tore through the forest. Rowan radioed in for forensic technicians, but even as he spoke, he felt a strange rhythm underlining his thoughts. The phone. Something about that phone. As the forensics team arrived and carefully began removing the skeletal remains, Rowan directed his flashlight into the hollowed interior. The phone glinted faintly in the beam. "Detective Hale?" a tech called. "You want us to bag the device?" Rowan hesitated, then nodded. Carefully, extremely carefully. The tech reached in with gloved hands, sliding the evidence bag over the phone without applying pressure, and as he lifted it, only a few inches, the screen flickered. Rowan froze. The tech jerked his hand slightly, startled. "Did you see?" "Hold it steady," Rowan said sharply. They both stared. The phone, this 21-year-old phone that should have been destroyed, flickered again, faint but unmistakable like a dying heartbeat, a digital glow struggling to exist. The tech swallowed. That shouldn't be possible. Rowan felt a tension settle into his spine. Get it to the lab. Now. The next scene cuts to the Bend Police Forensic Lab. Dimly lit, papers and evidence folders spread across metal tables. Rowan leaned forward, hands on the surface, watching the lead technician, Dr. Corliss, examine the phone beneath a magnified lamp. "The circuitry's damaged," she said, adjusting her glasses. "But the battery seems partially shielded by melted casing. It's unlikely, extremely unlikely, but not impossible." Rowan kept his gaze on the device. "Can you power it safely?" "If we isolate the battery feed and stabilize the connector, maybe." She paused. "But if there's anything on here, texts, logs, call records, we need to extract them without triggering corruption." Rowan nodded. "Do it." Corliss worked with steady hands, separating the fused components with microscopic precision. After nearly an hour, she connected the phone to a custom diagnostic port. Rowan exhaled slowly as she pressed a tiny switch. The room fell silent. Then, faintly, impossibly, The screen lit up. Static. Glitch. Blue tint. Then menu loading. Then messages. 1 unread. Corliss's eyebrows shot up. There's a message. Rowan's breath caught. Open it. The screen flickered again. A loading icon spun. Then the message appeared, distorted at the edges, but legible. Sent September 17th, 2003, 8:31 p.m. A timestamp less than 20 minutes after Emily was last seen. And the text, only 3 words. Rowan read them aloud, his voice almost a whisper. He's behind me. The room felt suddenly colder. Corliss exchanged a glance with Rowan. This was never sent? No, Rowan said slowly. It's in the outbox. It was typed, but she never hit send. Maybe she didn't have time. He stared at the words on the pixelated screen, the message Emily must have typed in panic, in fear, in the darkness of the forest before the end. Behind her. Someone she knew? Someone she trusted? Someone who followed her? The message revealed one more detail. The recipient. Rowan's pulse quickened as he read it. Mom. Fade cut. The scene transitions to Emily's mother's house. Present day. Small, quiet, framed with overgrown hydrangeas. She answered the door with tired eyes, the kind that had spent 21 years grieving without closure. Rowan explained the discovery carefully, gently, but when he mentioned the message, her hand moved to her mouth. Emily tried to text me? Rowan nodded. She typed a message. It didn't send. The phone was buried with her in the car. Her voice trembled. He's behind me? Rowan waited in silence. Is there anyone she feared back then? Anyone who followed her? Anyone who made her uncomfortable? Her eyes drifted downward. There was someone. Who? She hesitated. Her piano teacher, from when she was younger. She stopped taking lessons years before she vanished, but he still reached out sometimes. Nothing inappropriate on the surface, just strange, persistent. Rowan felt a pulse of recognition. Name? Mr. Haldren. Samuel Haldren. Rowan stepped back slightly, his mind shifting gears. Is he still alive? She nodded slowly. He never left town. Rowan thanked her, promising updates, though he knew promises in cold cases rarely brought comfort. Back at the station, Rowan dug through archived records. Samuel Haldren, local piano instructor. No criminal record, no complaints filed. But something else surfaced. He lived near the forest edge back in 2003, not far from where the car was found. A few blocks from Emily's old apartment. And one more detail that lodged itself like a thorn. He owned a dark pickup truck that matched the silhouette described by the neighbor who'd seen someone across the street the night Emily disappeared. Rowan pressed his hands to his desk, leaning forward. Someone always knew. Someone always hid something. And someone always walked just behind her. The next morning, Rowan drove to the old Haldren residence, a weathered house with peeling paint, ivy overtaking the porch, and wind chimes that clattered softly in the breeze. Samuel Haldren answered the door after several long seconds. He was older now, thin, with gray hair swept back behind his ears. His eyes were mild but wary. "Detective?" he said, voice tired. "I figured I might be seeing someone today. News travels. You found her, didn't you?" Rowan studied him carefully. "Word spreads that fast? A body found in the fire zone?" Haldren shrugged. "In a small town, nothing stays quiet." Rowan stepped forward slightly. "When was the last time you saw Emily Varner?" Haldren blinked once. 2 years before she vanished? She stopped lessons, went to college. I assumed she got busy. Rowan let a beat of silence hang. Where were you on September 17th, 2003? Haldren's jaw shifted. You're asking for a 21-year-old alibi? If you remember it. I don't. Rowan watched him for one long, waited moment. Then he saw something on the piano behind him. A photograph of a young woman with long brown hair. Emily. And beneath the frame, a small stack of handwritten notes. Sheet music, personalized, with her initials on the corner. Rowan's voice lowered. You kept her things? Haldren's eyes flickered. I keep many students, materials. It's sentimental. Rowan didn't believe him. Something in the house felt stale, like time had stopped the moment Emily vanished. He thanked Haldren and left, but not before catching one final detail near the door. A pair of hiking boots, mud still clinging to the soles, ash-colored, like they'd been walking near the burn zone. As Rowan drove away, the camera would slowly zoom in on the phone still sitting in the forensic lab, the message glowing faintly, as if the device were breathing. He's behind me. And then the phone flickered once more, as though something new were loading just beneath the surface, something they had not yet seen, something waiting to be revealed. Someone always knew, someone always watched, and the forest had finally given up its silence. Rowan exhaled slowly as he pulled into the station, unaware that the next discovery, the one that would break the case open, was already on its way to the surface, hidden in the data extracted from Emily's phone, encoded in the final seconds of her life. The screen fades to black, leaving a question suspended in the dark. If she knew he was behind her, why did she get into the car at all? Rowan barely slept that night. The message on the phone kept replaying in his mind, like a haunting refrain. He's behind me. Those 3 words carried the weight of 21 years, and yet they felt immediate, as if she had typed them only minutes ago. When he walked into the forensic lab the next morning, Corliss was already there, standing stiffly beside her workstation. The look on her face made Rowan's stomach tighten before she even spoke. We recovered something else, she said quietly. Rowan stepped closer. From the phone? Yes, she said, motioning to the monitor. Last night, while running a deeper diagnostic, the device attempted to load a corrupted audio file. It's short, less than 5 seconds, but it's something. Rowan leaned in as she pressed play. At first there was static, heavy, rough, the kind that comes from an old microphone or a signal failing. Then a faint rustle, a breath, a soft, trembling inhale, then a whisper, a single barely formed word. Rowan couldn't make it out at first. The static swallowed it, twisted it, but something was there under the noise. Corliss played it again. Rowan closed his eyes, filtering out the hiss, the crackle, the distortion. And then he heard it. A name, spoken in a broken, frightened voice. Sam. The breath leaving Rowan's chest was slow, steady, deliberate. Not Sam as in a stranger, not Sam as in coincidence, but Sam as in Samuel Haldren, her piano teacher. The man who claimed he hadn't seen her in years. The man who collected her old sheet music like relics. The man whose boots were covered in ash matching the burn zone. The whisper felt like a hand reaching out from the past, guiding them, begging not to be forgotten. Rowan straightened, jaw tight. We need to bring him in. But Corliss held up a hand. There's more. She opened another window on the screen. The phone's GPS log survived. Rowan blinked. It had GPS in 2003? Not modern GPS, she corrected. But some early phones stored tower pings. We were able to reconstruct the last known route. She clicked a map and a faded set of coordinates appeared. A path leading from Emily's apartment to the forest. But look, Corliss said, zooming into a point about halfway through the route. It stopped moving for almost 9 minutes. Rowan frowned. Why stop? We don't know, she said. But after that pause, the route changes direction, sharp turn, as if she wasn't the one driving anymore. Rowan stared in silence. Something was becoming painfully, disturbingly clear. Emily may have gotten into the car willingly, but she did not remain in control of it. Rowan grabbed his coat, thanked Corliss, and headed straight to Haldren's house. This time, when he knocked, there was no answer. The wind chimes rattled softly in the morning breeze. Rowan peered through the front window. The house looked slightly different. A light left on. A drawer open. The photograph of Emily still sitting on the piano, but now tilted, as though moved in haste. Rowan circled the house, checking the back door. It was unlocked. He stepped inside slowly, calling out, "Mr. Haldren?" His voice echoed through the dim hallway. No response. The house smelled faintly of dust and age, but something else lingered underneath it. Something metallic. Something sharp. The piano room was exactly as he remembered, except now a few papers lay scattered on the floor, as if someone had rifled through them quickly. On the bench, a metronome ticked back and forth, even though no one was there to start it. Rowan felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. He stepped forward, turning off the metronome, plunging the room into stillness. Then he saw the boots by the door, the ones covered in ash. Gone. Rowan moved through the house more urgently now, checking the bedroom, the kitchen, the basement. Empty. Haldren wasn't home, but he had left in a hurry. On the kitchen table, Rowan found a folded piece of paper. He opened it with gloved hands. Inside were 2 lines written in shaky cursive. "You shouldn't have found her. You don't know what you're waking up." Rowan felt his stomach drop. This wasn't the note of a grieving man. This was the note of someone feeling pressure closing in. A note from a cornered animal. Rowan took the note back to the station, but before he could even begin formulating the next move, his captain approached him. "You need to see this," the captain said, leading Rowan to the briefing room. On the screen was a photograph taken earlier that morning. A vehicle parked at the edge of the forest. A dark pickup truck. Haldren's truck. "A hiker called it in," the captain said. "About 20 miles from where Emily's car was found." Rowan stared at the image. "Where is Haldren now?" The captain exhaled. "We don't know." Rowan took the address and drove out to the forest road, the sky growing heavier with thick gray clouds. When he arrived, deputies were already placing markers around the area. The truck was empty, locked, the keys still inside. "No signs of struggle," a deputy said. "He parked it here deliberately." Rowan felt an unease settle into his bones. "He's on foot," he said. "Somewhere in the forest." Rowan walked past the truck, gazing into the darkened woods. The trees here were untouched by the recent fire, towering and dense, branches interlocking overhead like an ancient cathedral ceiling. The air felt heavier than it should have, as if holding too many secrets. Rowan moved deeper into the trees, following faint impressions in the soil. Footprints, but not crisp ones, more like disturbances. Someone walking quickly, someone with purpose. He followed the prints until they stopped abruptly. Not faded, not scattered, just stopped. As if the person vanished mid-step. Rowan crouched, examining the ground. Then he saw something caught between roots. A scrap of paper. He pulled it out gently. Sheet music. The same kind Emily used for lessons. But this one was incomplete, as if torn from something larger. On the margin was a handwritten note. Practice this before Wednesday. Rowan felt his breath catch. Wednesday, September 17th, 2003, the day she vanished. His mind assembled pieces with an eerie clarity. Emily had been meeting Haldren the night she disappeared. He hadn't been just a man from her childhood. He had been in her life again, quietly, secretly, behind the scenes. Rowan returned to the station, and with all evidence laid out, he finally confronted the truth he had been circling from the beginning. Emily had not simply vanished. She had been taken, and Haldren had used her trust, carved over years of lessons and mentorship, as a weapon. As Rowan stood over the evidence board, connecting photographs and timelines, a deputy hurried into the room. "Detective, you need to see this." Rowan followed him to the communications desk, where a dispatcher held a phone with a bewildered expression. "We just got a voicemail," she said, "from an unlisted number." "What does it say?" Rowan asked. The dispatcher swallowed. "It doesn't say anything, just noise." Rowan took the phone, pressed play. The recording began with wind, then footsteps. Someone walking slowly through leaves. A faint, rhythmic clicking sound, like a metronome ticking far away. Then a voice, whisper thin. "You can't follow what you don't understand." Rowan's grip tightened. "Haldren." Then the message ended with a single piano note. High, sharp, jarring. Rowan lowered the phone, a cold realization trickling through him. He's leading us somewhere. The captain shook his head. Or he's distracting us. Rowan stared at the map of the forest pinned on the wall, his eyes tracing the path from Emily's apartment to the burn zone to the location of Haldren's abandoned truck. Then he noticed something he hadn't before. All the points formed a loose triangle, each vertex aligning with places Emily had spent time in the weeks before she vanished. Her apartment, the forest entrance, and one more place she had visited regularly, according to her mother. The abandoned music hall on the outskirts of town. A place Emily had loved for its acoustics. A place Haldren used to teach lessons on weekends before it shut down. A place that had been closed for years. Rowan drove there immediately. The building stood at the end of a long dirt road, its windows boarded, its roof sagging. He approached cautiously, the wind rustling through broken shingles, making the building sound as though it were breathing softly. The front door was slightly ajar. Rowan pushed it open. Inside, the hall was dark, cavernous, filled with dust and silence. Rows of broken chairs lined the floor. At the front of the hall stood a grand piano, its lid open like a yawning mouth. Something sat on the piano bench, a notebook. Rowan approached slowly, every step echoing in the empty hall. The notebook was worn, its pages yellowed. He opened it. Inside were names, dozens of them. Students Haldren had taught over the years. Next to some names were dates, and next to a few, an X. Rowan flipped until he found Emily's page. Her name was circled twice, and beside the circled name, a date, September 17th, 2003. Beneath the date, one more detail. A time. 8:00 p.m. Rowan stared at the page. Emily hadn't been randomly taken. She had been scheduled. A chill ran through him as he closed the notebook. Then he heard it. A soft sound, barely audible. A footstep. Rowan turned sharply. "Haldren," he said into the darkness, voice steady. Another step. Then a figure emerged from the shadows near the stage wings. Haldren's face looked hollow, drained, his eyes distant but alert. "You shouldn't be here, Detective," he said softly. "This place isn't for the living anymore." Rowan stepped forward. "You knew her schedule. You knew exactly when she'd be alone." Haldren's smile was faint and unsettling. "She came to me," he said. "She always came to me. She trusted me. And you took advantage of that," Rowan said sharply. "You followed her into the forest." Haldren shook his head slowly. "No, I didn't need to follow. She drove herself there." Rowan's voice hardened. "Why?" Haldren's eyes shifted toward the piano. "To practice," he said simply. "We always practiced in secret. No one understood her music the way I did." Rowan felt anger rising inside him. "You killed her." Haldren blinked once. "I didn't kill her," he said quietly. "The forest did." Rowan stared, confused for a moment until Haldren continued. "She got scared. She ran. She tripped. I tried to help her." His voice shook. "But she fought. She didn't understand." Rowan felt a cold fury tighten his chest. "So you hid the body? Hid the car? Hid everything?" Haldren's eyes glistened. "She didn't deserve to be found," he whispered. "She was mine, not theirs, not the world's." Rowan stepped forward, pulling cuffs from his belt. "Samuel Haldren, you're under arrest for the murder of Emily Varner." But Haldren stepped back, lifting something from behind the piano. Not a weapon. A sheet of music. Emily's handwriting on it. A small, trembling smile crossed his face. "She wrote this the day before she died," he said. "Her final piece." Rowan reached out carefully. "Put it down, Sam." Haldren's eyes softened. "You don't understand," he whispered. "The piece isn't finished." "She never got the chance," Rowan said firmly. "Because of you." Haldren shook his head again. "No, Detective. Because of you." Rowan froze. "What are you talking about?" Haldren stepped into the half-light. His expression suddenly filled with an eerie calm. "You weren't supposed to find her," he said. "No one was. She was meant to stay part of the forest." Rowan's pulse raced. "Sam, put the paper down. Walk toward me." Haldren held the music to his chest. "If she can't finish the piece, neither can I." Before Rowan could react, Haldren stepped backward into the open orchestra pit behind him. His body vanished into the darkness with a sickening thud. Rowan rushed forward, shining his flashlight downward, but it was too late. Haldren lay motionless, eyes open, expression frozen in that same haunting calm. Paramedics arrived minutes later, but there was nothing they could do. Rowan stood in the empty music hall, the weight of 21 years pressing against him. Emily Varner's killer, or the closest thing the case had ever known, was dead. But closure didn't settle into Rowan's chest the way he expected. Instead, a quiet sadness sat there, steady and heavy. At the station, Rowan returned to Emily's phone one last time. The cracked screen still glowed faintly. He opened the message again. "He's behind me." He stared at the words, then whispered softly, "We got him, Emily." As he turned to leave, The phone flickered one final time, and for a split second, the screen displayed something new. A photo, a blurry image, a forest trail, a figure standing just behind Emily. The timestamp read 8:29 p.m., 2 minutes after she typed the message. Rowan stared at the image, his throat tight. She had tried to show them all along. And finally, after 21 years, her voice had been heard. The screen faded to black, and the case file closed with the quiet echo of a piano note that would linger in Rowan's memory for the rest of his life.